Welcome to Revenge Return, where love is never simple, revenge is never accidental, and every story unfolds with secrets, betrayal, and emotional twists you won't see coming. This is where the story begins. The first message came from a neighbor I'd known since childhood. "Hey, didn't know you were renting the lake house out. Pretty busy over there lately." I stared at my phone in my Seattle apartment, confused. The lake house sat empty most of the year. I kept it that way intentionally. A quiet place to write. To escape the noise of a tech career that paid well but hollowed me out. I opened Airbnb. Typed in my address. There it was. My house. Professional photos of my living room, my deck, my bedroom. 5-star reviews. Susan and Richard were wonderful hosts. Booked solid through September. Current rate, $285 per night. I called my mother. "Oh honey, we were going to tell you," she said, voice light and dismissive. "We've been paying the property taxes for 3 years. It's only fair we get some use out of it." "You've been renting out my house?" "It was just sitting there." "You're in Seattle. We're managing everything. Cleaning, keys, maintenance. Really, we're doing you a favor. The income helps cover what we've spent." My jaw tightened. That tell when you're trying not to explode. "Mom, it's my house. Family property, sweetheart. Don't be selfish about this." She hung up. I sat there in the dim light of my apartment, rain tapping against the window. The lake house wasn't just property. It was the place I'd bought with my first book advance. A small miracle in an industry that rarely pays. The place I'd written my second novel, the one that actually sold. The place that proved I could build something without my family's approval or involvement. And they turned it into their personal ATM. The ghost ledger started forming in my mind, though I didn't have a name for it yet. Years of "when are you getting a real job?" while I wrote. Years of still playing at being an author, when my novels sold modestly but steadily. Years of silence when my third book hit the regional bestseller list. But now, secretly profiting from my work? That required a spreadsheet. I opened my laptop and started documenting. The ghost ledger. Cost accounting beyond money. Property tax claim. 3 years at $4,200 annually equals $12,600. They paid this without asking, then used it as justification to commit fraud. Cost. My ownership turned into their leverage. Just sitting there, dismissal. My writing retreat called wasteful. My quiet sanctuary called selfish. Cost. The assumption that space without their approval has no value. "We're doing you a favor," gaslighting. Turning theft into generosity. Making me feel ungrateful for objecting to crime. Cost. Years of questioning my own perception of reality. The unasked permission. Booking strangers into my home without consent. Going through my belongings to stage photos. Cost. Privacy, security, the basic right to control my own space. The numbers were easy to calculate. 8 months at $285 per night. Average 22 days booked per month. Dad had collected approximately $47,000. But the emotional cost? That spreadsheet had no bottom. I remembered the moment I decided to buy the lake house. I was 26, sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, staring at the advance check for my first novel. $35,000. My mother had called it nice in a tone that meant pathetic. My father asked if I was still planning to keep the day job. I'd bought the house anyway. 1-bedroom cabin, private dock, surrounded by pine trees. The mortgage was manageable. The peace was invaluable. That cabin was where I learned I didn't need their validation to build a life. Now they were selling it by the night. I called the county tax assessor's office the next morning. "I need ownership records for 1847 Lakeshore Drive," I told the clerk. "Property owner requests are public record. I can email you the assessment and deed information." "How long?" 10 minutes. The email arrived in 8. Property owner, Sarah Chinme. Date of purchase, June 2019. Assessed value, $340,000. Tax payment records. Paid by Richard and Susan Chin, parents, 2021 to 2023, total $12,600. There was documentation. They'd paid the taxes, true. But payment doesn't transfer ownership. It certainly doesn't authorize commercial rental income. I called a real estate attorney I'd met at a writers' conference. She listened to the situation and went quiet for a moment. Sir, this is fraud. They're operating a commercial rental business using property they don't own, collecting substantial income, and presumably not reporting it properly. What do I do? Document everything. Download all Airbnb records while you can. Get the tax records. Then we file a cease and desist, report the fraudulent listing, and if they've been claiming tax deductions or hiding income, this becomes a tax fraud issue. I spent the next 3 hours screenshotting everything. 43 5-star reviews. Guest messages thanking Susan and Richard for their hospitality. Photos of my personal books used as staging props. My grandmother's quilt visible in the bedroom listing. Then I noticed something in the Airbnb host profile. Under business information, Chin Family Vacation Rentals LLC. They'd created an LLC, using my property as an asset. The next microclimax hit when I found their business registration with the Secretary of State. Chin Family Vacation Rentals LLC, registered January 2021. Members, Richard Chin, Susan Chin. Business purpose, short-term vacation property management and rental services. They'd formalized it. This wasn't impulse. This was premeditated. I contacted Airbnb's fraud department with ownership documentation. The listing was suspended within 24 hours. Then I received an angry call from my mother. You're destroying our business. Do you know how much work we've put into this? Into renting my house without permission? We told you we were paying the taxes. You never objected. I didn't know you were running a commercial rental operation, Mom. That's fraud. It's family. You're supposed to share. The philosophy of it struck me then, clear as lake water. Family isn't entitlement. It's not permission to take whatever sits unused in someone else's life. Family is respect. Boundaries. Asking before assuming. They'd never asked. My attorney sent the cease and desist letter. My parents responded through their own attorney, the family accountant who'd been doing their taxes for 20 years. His letter claimed good faith misunderstanding of property rights, and offered to discuss reasonable compensation for the property owner's inconvenience. That's when I noticed line item deductions on the LLC's tax returns. They'd been deducting mortgage interest. On my mortgage. That I paid. They'd been deducting property maintenance, utilities, and improvements. On my property. Using my rental income. The CPA had signed these returns. I forwarded everything to the IRS. The procedural justice sequence. The investigation took 4 months. I received updates every 2 weeks from the assigned agent. Week 2. Initial review confirmed ownership discrepancy. Request sent to Chin Family Vacation Rentals LLC for income documentation. Week 4. Rental income of $89,000 over 24 months confirmed. Property ownership verification requested from Richard and Susan Chin. None provided because none existed. Week 6. Mortgage interest deduction flagged. Sarah Chin confirmed as mortgage holder. No rental agreement exists between parties. Week 10. CPA David Morrison interviewed regarding due diligence on property ownership verification before accepting client deductions. No verification records found. Week 12. Amended tax returns required. Full rental income must be reported. All property-related deductions disallowed. Penalties assessed for fraudulent deductions. Week 14. Additional civil liability calculated. Commercial use of property without owner consent may constitute conversion. Recommended for civil court proceedings. Week 16. State CPA Board notified of potential ethics violations. Formal investigation initiated into David Morrison's professional conduct. Each email was a small victory. Each confirmation that the system was working exactly as designed. The family confrontation happened at what was supposed to be my cousin's graduation dinner. My mother approached me in the restaurant parking lot, my father standing behind her with his arms crossed. You reported us to the IRS, Mom said. Not a question. You committed tax fraud using my property. We're your parents. You're supposed to protect family. And there was the fundamental difference in how we defined family. Family protects each other, I said. It doesn't steal from each other. Doesn't lie. Doesn't build businesses on property they don't own. You didn't protect me. You exploited me. We paid those taxes. Without asking. then used that payment as justification to take $89,000 in rental income from my property and claim tax deductions on my mortgage. You involved your accountant in fraud. My father finally spoke. David's losing his license because of you. David lost his license because he didn't verify ownership before claiming deductions. That's his job. He didn't do it. I walked past them into the restaurant, attended my cousin's celebration, and left early. The consequences cascaded over the following months. Immediate. Airbnb listing deleted. LLC dissolved. All future bookings cancelled with full refunds required. Financial. IRS assessment of $31,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest. Civil lawsuit filed by me seeking $89,000 in unauthorized rental income collected. Professional. David Morrison's CPA license suspended pending ethics board review. 3-month suspension ultimately imposed. 2 other clients left his practice after learning of the investigation. Social. Story spread through our extended family. My aunt asked me privately, "Is it true they were renting your house?" When I confirmed, she said, "Jesus. I wouldn't even rent my sister's car without asking." Family. No contact for 8 months. I blocked their numbers after the 15th voicemail demanding I drop this vendetta. 6 months after the investigation concluded, I drove to the lake house. First time in a year. The place felt different. Cleaner, maybe they'd maintained it well for their guest. But walking through rooms where strangers had slept, where my mother had staged photos using my belongings, where my father had collected money that was never his, it felt violated. I spent a week there. Wrote during the mornings. Kayaked in the afternoons. Sat on the dock at sunset watching the water turn gold. The second night I burned the guest book my mother had left. 43 reviews from strangers praising my parents' hospitality in my house. The ashes drifted across the water. I thought about David Morrison. His 20-year career. His suspended license. His clients leaving. He'd made a choice. Take the easy money, skip the verification, trust the clients. He'd gambled that a family renting their lake house didn't need documentation. He'd lost. My parents made a choice too. See an empty house and assume ownership. See my absence and call it permission. See my success and find a way to profit from it. They'd gambled that I'd never check. Never care. Never fight back. They'd lost everything. 1 year later. The lake house is mine. Fully, completely, without question. No Airbnb. No guests. Just a cabin in the pines where I write books that my family doesn't read. I sold the film rights to my 4th novel last month. $400,000. Used part of it to install a new deck, a better dock, and a gate at the end of the driveway. The gate has a keypad. My parents don't have the code. My mother sent a letter. No return address, just her handwriting on expensive stationery. We made mistakes. We'd like to talk. Family should forgive. I didn't respond. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation. Understanding isn't access. I understand what they did. Saw an opportunity, took it, justified it with payment of taxes they'd volunteered to pay. But understanding doesn't mean I'm required to let them do it again. The lake house sits quiet most of the year. I visit 6 or 7 times. Right. Think. Watch the water. Last week a neighbor stopped by. The same one who'd sent that first message. "Good to see you around again," he said. "Place feels right now. Your parents were nice enough, but it always felt like, I don't know, like they were playing house with someone else's life." "They were," I said. He nodded and left. I sat on the new deck, watched the sunset turn the water to fire, and thought about my mother's voice on that first phone call. It was just sitting there. Space without her approval had no value. Work without her validation was a hobby. Property without her use was waste. She'd finally proven something. He was wrong.